This is Capitalize Your Finances, the show representing you, a select group of excited, ready, and fired up listeners seeking to potentially maximize your money moves and get after it. We don't settle for generic advice of always and nevers. Our currency is our intellect, and we constantly seek the logical way of likely creating advantages to potentially maximize wealth for our personal and unique situations. This show brings you the step-by-step framework to capitalize your finances in the aspects of your financial situation, and we strive to explore strategies and ideas to potentially help you capitalize on your financial decisions. We are capitalizers, and this is our show.
Welcome back to Capitalize Your Finances. As always, I am your host, Christopher A. Panayiotou, the Cap and Capitalize, and today we have a very special guest. He's the author of Who is Max Lewis? 37 chapters, 37 lessons, $37 million. The Max Lewis. Max, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
This is going to be fantastic. I was going to ask what you sold the business for, but that was an embarrassing dad joke, and my team decided to have me not do that. But before we dive into your book, which is arguably one of the best business books I have ever read, give our listeners a brief background on who you are.
Who am I, or what the book's about?
Who you are, because we're going to get into the book.
Okay. I was born and raised in Miami, Florida, Cuban Dominican descent. I owned a small business. It was called Florida Propane Exchange. I grew it to be the largest independent propane cylinder exchange company in the state. And I sold that business to AmeriGas, which is the biggest propane company in the United States. I still live in Miami, Florida, fish a lot. I retired 7 years ago, still dabble in different things. I own 9 restaurants, a bunch of real estate, invest into all kinds of different things, but for the most part, kind of a little bit laid back these days.
I love it. And for those of you that are choosing to not watch the show and are just listening in, Max is sitting in the closest thing I've seen to like an actual replica of the Game of Thrones chair. So that's where at least $3 million of the sale of the business went to. Now, I want to dive into your book, and I want to be obviously respectful of your time. Right off the bat, you actually talk about this story of your love for making money, and it began at 8 years old. And that was when you and your dad were going door to door selling mangoes, if my memory is not failing me. And you talked about all the valuable traits you gained from your experience, but I'm curious, if you decide to have kids, and we've talked about that in the past, what would you do differently?
I don't think I'd do anything differently.
Nothing?
No, I think I'd do the same thing. I make them work. I make them hustle. And, I have nephews. I don't have children of my own, but I have nephews. And I know it's tough to see your kids struggle. You don't want to see them suffer some of the same things you did as a parent growing up, but it's very valuable lesson to give them that experience and kind of teach them, the value of a dollar and what it could take to earn money if you have no skills or no education. So I would put them through the same ringer, make them earn the money, whether it's pulling weeds or selling mangoes or washing a car. You really want that lesson to kind of take hold. I would do the same things, man. I'd probably make it even a little harder, more challenging.
Okay. Well, because that's what I was going to say. Because on the surface, I kind of assume that you wouldn't have changed anything, but there's always that window for improvement, and I think we could go with that through everything. So there aren't even any nuances that you would maybe alter a little bit?
Yes, yeah. So specifically, and thank you for clarifying and saying that. So specifically, I would have my kids work on strategy. So it's not necessarily just, hey, if you want to make money, go pull weeds in the backyard. I'd let them do that, but then maybe I'd say, okay, what's a better strategy? I'd kind of like access their mind and their creativity and see what they come up with, because I'm a big fan of questions and thinking as a skill. So I'd want to trigger that in them at as early as of an age as possible so that they can start thinking outside of the box, so to speak, and say, you know, there's probably a better way to do this. What I've seen with a lot of people is they'll find something that works, and then they'll just do that forever without really ever questioning, is there a better way to do this?
Yes.
Could I be, you know, more effective? You know, so that is the element that I would add to that. I'd let them kind of struggle a little bit, see how, you know, hard and challenging the things like washing cars or whatever could be, and then, hey, let me ask you some questions. And I'd probably come up with some pretty badass questions, as you know.
I am well aware of that. Well, and it's also interesting. We'll maybe get to this later in the episode if we have time. How people find something that works and they stick to it and they don't alter it. I think that is how do I say this? It's such a tough balancing act, because there are people that can say, I should have changed this, and this earlier. But if they hadn't gone through with that experience and they changed it too early, it could have been super detrimental. So just as a side note for listeners that are trying to be entrepreneurial, or are already entrepreneurs, make sure you really balance that tightrope between altering what is working or sticking to it. Now, I want to get back to your book, because your dad was instrumental in your success, really your whole family. When your dad rewarded you with your bike after you successfully saved money, did you ever think of reinvesting into yourself at an early age, or did that even cross your mind? And I'm going to give your 8-year-old self the benefit of the doubt if that did not happen.
Well, I was more interested in saving and making money than really the bike at that point, because the game of making money, saving money became so fun to me. And I think more importantly, since I was making my father proud, that became leverage. You know, I wanted my father to be proud of me. I wanted him to acknowledge me. Yeah. And that was really good leverage for him to use as, you know, I want this lesson to take hold. So once I saw how excited he was and happy he was about me saving this money and, you know, selling things and etc., that's all I really needed. I mean, after that, I really didn't care about much else. You know, as a young kid, I just, I craved my father's love.
Yeah.
And that was good leverage.
Well, and that's, and it's one of those things where the fact that you figured out all of this stuff at not only an early age, but like extremely early age, it's beyond impressive. It's almost bizarre, if we got to be frank, because most people don't have that. I mean, let's just be really honest. I mean, I started investing when I was 10, but when I was 8, I mean, I was just, I was not a great, I mean, I wasn't a bad kid, but like, I was just an annoying kid, like a very annoying, talkative kid. And now I'm no longer a kid, I'm just annoying, but it's neither here nor there. You eventually graduated from mangoes to candy at the mature age of 12, which, again, that's 4 years in business. So by that time, you're already talking profit margins. So did you begin to understand these terms as for what they were? Or was this all just purely conceptual and going with your gut off of experience?
No, I understood it because it was explained to me. And I think to what you were just saying, anyone could have done what I did. Anyone. Yeah. Had you had the lesson and we channeled your energy, if we find the right leverage, right? For me, the leverage was my father. He was, you know, I just wanted to make him happy, right? But for someone else, maybe, I don't know, maybe it could have been going to Disney World. You know, who knows? At a young age, you have, you know, different aspirations.
Sure.
But I think anyone can do it. And as a matter of fact, not too long ago, I was at a like an outdoor cigar bar area in Coral Gables, and there was a young mother there with her son and her husband, and there was a kid, and he was running around, and man, sure, I mean, this was awesome. So the kid walks up to me, and he asks me for, I don't know what the hell he asked me for, and I took it as like, you know what, I'm going to teach this kid a lesson right now. And I said, well, I can't remember what it was. I wish I would remember what he asked me for. But long story short, I said, why don't you make some money instead and you could get your own? He's like, how do I make money? I said, well, there was some candy there. And I said, why don't you get these candies? They were breath mints. I said, why don't you get these breath mints and go around and see if someone will buy them from you? He's like, okay, how much? And I said, $3. So first guy he walked into just happened to be a salesman. He was like sitting on to the side of me. And kid walks up to him, hey, I want, would you buy this, whatever? And the guy's like, absolutely. Buys it from him right off the bat. And then he tells him, keep it. So he comes back with the $3 and the candy. So he's like, oh, look, I made $3. I was like, he gave you the thing. You got really lucky. Go sell it to someone else. So he goes and he actually sells it this time. And long story short, this kid, before he left, because they left like maybe 20 minutes after that, dude, he had like $10-15. He was selling everything. He's like grabbing shit off the table. Can I sell this? Can I sell that? He was walking to everybody and asking them if they'd buy stuff. He turned into a salesman in less than half an hour. Mm-hmm. He got that principle. He got the concept. And next thing you know, he just learned how to make money. And that took, literally 10, 20 minutes. Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
That is pretty awesome. Well, this was a long time ago. We had a previous guest, Peter Margaritas, through... and he's a CPA teacher through the University of Oklahoma State, excuse me. Big difference. You can't mess that up between Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. And we were talking about something similar to that regard, and I was talking about my, as of now, 9-month-old daughter in the lemonade stand. And it's one of those things where so many of these parents, the intention is great. They set up the lemonade stand outside their home. The kid sells a couple cups of lemonade, and then they're over it. And I go, no. Mm-hmm. You got to go outside your home, and then the next weekend, right, because they got school or whatever, then you go to Whole Foods. And then you go to, in our case, locally, Trader Joe's or Safeway or a Mini Mart. And then you teach them the art of location and the art of sale and the quality of the customer and all of that. Nothing against anyone at, local Mini Mart, but Whole Foods, it's nicknamed Whole Paycheck for a reason. So
right.
I think it's awesome that you created that salesman very quickly. Now, if you told him how much he'd be taxed on that, you would have created a capitalist very quickly right after.
Yeah, I'd have to give him your phone number.
That's right. That's right. Well, let's fast.
I'll tell you what else. In addition to what you're saying, I believe like the lemonade stand is great, but you got to take it a step further. You got to get out of your comfort zone, because the stand is awesome because it's a good place to start, but they're still kind of like hiding behind this table and waiting for people to come up. And if somebody comes up and buys lemonade, they have a sale, but if no one comes up, they don't sell shit. Pardon my French. So I'd prefer to say like, okay, if no one comes up, get from behind this table, go out and, socialize, introduce yourself, tell people, hi, my name's Chris. I'm selling lemonade right over there. Like get them to interact so they can start getting comfortable with getting uncomfortable. Because it's not always that comfortable an experience to go out and try to convince someone to buy something from you.
Yes.
So I think that was a really important part of my lesson was, okay, it's not going to come to me. I have to go get after it. So let me get out of, this chair and go make something happen.
Yeah. The $3 million chair. Well, so let's fast forward a little bit to when you were 18-ish. So you had your first investment property in a warehouse, which I believe you still enjoy the income today, unless something has changed. And I'm sure we're going to get into investment strategies later on in the show. But for now, I'm curious, once you made this first purchase, and this could be a much deeper conversation than just what I'm about to ask. Mm-hmm. Would you say you immediately had a bias, not a bad one per se, but a bias towards real estate as an investment?
No, it's all I knew.
Okay.
But first of all, I was extremely scared to make that investment. Mm-hmm. Very nervous. It was nerve-wracking. Like trying to hold down the curse words because I curse a lot.
That's okay. Yeah.
The profanity.
Yeah.
But I was very scared.
Yeah.
I was really scared. I didn't know how it was going to work out. So, fast forward till today, you're like, wow, it worked out pretty amazing. I made millions of dollars off of it. That's great. But at that time, all I knew was I pretty much took all the money I had, used it as a down payment to buy a real estate property, and I was making initially between like $500 and $800 a month. Mm-hmm. after paying my mortgage. So I saw it as a good thing. I just didn't know how good.
Sure.
And I didn't know how it was going to turn out. I just knew, okay, this is probably a good move.
Yeah.
3-4 years later, I was able to pay it off. And then I saw it as a very, very good thing. I was like, wow, this is great. You know, I don't have to work. And I got, you know, at the time I was probably making like $4,000 or $5,000 off of that warehouse.
Yeah.
So it felt awesome. I was like, well, I have like, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 a month that I don't have to work for. This is amazing.
Oh, and don't get me wrong. I mean, real estate can be a phenomenal investment. It's just interesting. And you just answered my question, but I've seen so many people, whether they're guests, whether they come through my office, whatever the case is, and the amount of bias towards real estate is so crazy to me. But people have been able to get away with it because, and I don't know exactly when you bought your piece of real estate. Obviously 18. I don't want to age you, right? But for a lot of these people over the last, I'd say 10 to 15 years, for sure 10 years, you could have been a borderline bozo and done really, really, really well in real estate, and then you get away with it and keep getting away with it, and eventually you don't keep getting away with it. So I just find it kind of fascinating. Now, in your early days, and I believe you were making $32,000 in your first season selling propane tanks via transportation. One of your greatest competitive advantages was knowing the numbers like the back of your hand. Now, this is more of a surface level question, but I've got to ask. Doesn't it shock you how many people that run businesses don't know their numbers? And a second parter to that is, what is your biggest pet peeve in business?
Well, yes, it absolutely does shock me. But you know what's even more shocking? The people that have the numbers and don't know what the hell they mean. That to me, I mean, I coach a lot of people, and when they're like, yeah, I'll show you my P&L. And I'm like, this P&L looks like total crap. Like, do you know what these numbers mean? Oh, I made $500,000 this year. I'm like, you didn't make $500,000. You grossed $500,000.
Oh,
you didn't make anything.
Yeah.
You know, like, these are the type of things that I have encountered in the past. Yeah. I'm like, it's just shocking to me that people don't really understand how well or how poor they're doing. Mm-hmm. Some people know no numbers at all, which is crazy, and then you have people like that, and then there's very few people that understand exactly how well they're doing and what they need to do to improve or course correct. It's kind of crazy. It is really, really impressive I mean, that number's, I'd say 7 out of 10 people really don't have a clue of finances.
You really think it's that high? I mean, obviously not every single person's going to know, but 7 out of 10. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, I experienced this myself. I was that guy early on. You know, the accountant. Hey, what is this, good or bad? Like,
yeah,
well, debits, credits. You know, okay, is it good? Or am I doing good or am I doing bad?
Yeah.
You know, I know what I'm doing at my level, but then the accountant comes and says, you know, you're doing great, you're doing bad, you owe this much in taxes, and you say, well, hold on a second, the more money I get, the more money you're going to tax me. It's almost like I'm being punished for being successful. Mm-hmm. Right? That's what a layman would say, and I was a layman. So I was like, I don't get this. You know, there's a lot of strategy that is involved with, depending on what your outcome is. You know, if you're trying to, for example, sell a business, smartest thing to do is put every single dollar in the company, show as much profit as absolutely possible. And when you do that, you're going to pay a lot of freaking taxes. And if you're reinvesting into your business and, you know, buying more assets, usually that means at the end of the year, you're going to have very little cash, but you're going to have, you know, a 30 to 40% tax liability. Uh-huh. So like in my case, at one point, I owed more money in taxes than I had in cash, even though I made a couple $1 million. So, you know, people don't understand that, and there's a lot to it, man. And there's different strategies for, are you growing a business to just live off of it? Or are you trying to sell it? There's different strategies that you should be deploying depending on what your outcome is.
Yeah. Well, and so, I would imagine, going on a little tangent here, your business being with propane and really just having materials in general, like, because you know the big three statements: the balance sheet, income statement or P&L, and then cash flow. And in our business, we're service based, and so balance sheet doesn't really mean a whole heck of a lot, and cash flow, right. It's like, well, our operating activity is our income. So I live and die by the profit and loss versus for a lot of these companies with material goods, did you lean more on the cash flow statement once you understood it, or were you more of a P&L guy?
I was a P&L guy.
Okay, so you and I are the same.
I was a P&L guy. Well, in my business, the unfortunate reality of the business that I was in was I needed a lot of assets to produce cash, right? So I'd have to buy more propane tanks. I'd have to buy more cages. I'd have to buy more trucks. There's a lot of things I needed to buy. Once I bought those assets and put them to work, it created a good amount of cash flow.
Right.
But it would take, let's say on average a year, just to throw a number, to get to just break even and then start being profitable, so to speak, after I've paid myself back. So you think about it, if I spend $1 million this month in, assets, I'm not going to get that $1 million back, let's say, till next year. But then next month I'm going to spend another $1 million. And then next month I'm going to spend another $1 million. And it looks really great on your P&L. You say, wow, this guy's making $2-3 million. It's like, yeah, how much did you spend in order to get that cash flow? And that's the issue with the propane business. You're constantly buying equipment. It's like a never-ending, battle. So that was my struggle.
Yeah. No, I get it. Well, before we move on, there's a book I want to recommend that you snag. It's called Where the Money Is by Adam Cecil. And what you were just mentioning regarding the tax code and deducting research and development or depreciation or whatever the case is, that book has single-handedly opened my eyes and a lot of our listeners' eyes into how to value a business, whether it's a stock or their own, and compare it to what type of business is it? Is it propane? Is it tech? Is it a consumer good? So I strongly recommend you dive into it. You will thank me later.
I'll check it out.
Yeah. And Adam was on the show. He's a phenomenal guy. Now, due to the nature of your business being cyclical, and these were your words, not mine, on one hand, it was a tremendous gift because you could think about the next winter season with propane and when it was booming and really capitalize on it, pun intended. The downside is obvious when you have more time on your hands where you're not making money. And I've noticed that especially with entrepreneurs, they make a mistake of trying to diversify their business too early. This goes back to kind of what we said earlier. And often they shouldn't diversify ever. You were open and honest about your initial setback in doing so, and I'm curious if you think this is the largest business mistake people make, and if not, what do you think is?
Yeah, I absolutely think it is the biggest mistake because you don't create wealth by diversifying. You create wealth by doing one thing, kicking ass in that thing, putting all of your eggs into that basket so that you can create something. And once you create that thing and it's, shooting off profits for you, you maintain your wealth by saying, okay, now I got whatever, $10 million. Let's buy some real estate. Let's get some stocks. Let's, whatever it is that you're into. But that's how you maintain your wealth. But you can't create wealth that way. And a lot of people don't understand that. And a lot of people think that they need to diversify very early on. And it's like, for example, I made $1,000 washing cars. Okay, great. All right, I'm going to get this money and I'm going to go. No, dude. If you just made $1,000 washing cars, why don't you reinvest into what just gave you the money to see if we could turn it into $2,000 or $3,000? And then when you get to a point where you're like, okay, now it's, for example, $1 million. All right, let's diversify. But $1,000, you're not going to do anything with $1,000. You can buy any stock you want or any real estate you want. It's for the immediate future. It's not really going to help you that much. What could help you is if you continue to invest into whatever is giving you that result.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not going to go on a tangent of why I think diversification can be just utter garbage, but there is a saying in our world, and I forget who coined it. It was definitely not me, but concentration is what builds wealth. diversification is what keeps wealth. So it's a phenomenal saying, you know.
That's exactly right. That's exactly it.
Well, and there's another quote in your book that I want to read, and it's a direct one. Quote, "There is always more than one option." Mm-hmm. This is something you referenced when one of your vendors moved on and you quickly needed to pivot to another. So this got me thinking of a phrase I heard a while ago that sat interestingly with me. Everyone is replaceable. What is your take on that?
Yes.
Explain.
Yes. Everyone is replaceable. Yeah, I mean, I think that oftentimes we kind of, we're looking at things from this up close. I mean, Chris is the only guy who could do it. Chris is the only guy who could do it. It's like, okay, hold on a second. There's a whole world of people out here that can probably do it. But if I'm so focused on it being Chris who's going to solve my problems for me or be the best manager or the best driver or whatever the business is, then you're going to be stuck on stupid. And you need to understand and acknowledge the fact that there are a ton of extremely talented and bright people in the world. And if you want to have them on your team or hire them or be part of your organization, you got to go out and look for them. And the best people are usually working somewhere else, doing something. They're very seldomly the guys on monster.com or things of that nature, because badass people who are really, really good are typically not looking for work. Typically. Yeah. They might be at a place and not be that happy and be open to new opportunities. But the best people are usually not unemployed. They're employed. And, you're probably going to have to go headhunt and find, these very talented people, but you will find them. I mean, think about how big the world is. How many billions of people are there in the world? Yeah. Like, you're going to tell me that I'm not replaceable, that the next guy's not replaceable? Of course, man. There's a lot of people smarter than me, better looking than me. I know that's hard to believe.
Yeah, I don't believe that one. I don't believe that one.
But yeah, man, of course, they're absolutely replaceable. I think sometimes we just kind of get scared. We're scared of having the need to replace someone, go out and look for that person. What if they don't know this? What if they don't know that? Blah, blah, blah. And I think that's a lot of that is internal. Yeah. We kind of psych ourselves out and scare ourselves more than we need to, instead of saying, okay, hold on, let me monitor my self-talk here and be proactive and be more solution-oriented than, trying to talk myself out of it or make it worse than it really is in reality.
Interesting. Well, and I go back and forth on that. I've actually landed on the opposite. I don't think everyone is replaceable. And the only reason I say that, and maybe it's just because I'm, thinking of myself, I always wake up and ask, what can I do to become irreplaceable? Mm-hmm. And I feel like if you have, because technically, right, everyone is replaceable. But as an entrepreneur, I don't think we can afford to have that mentality.
Can I change yours?
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm totally open to it. Yeah, I'm not set on it.
How about we change it to, what can I do to add the most value? Because replaceable, you're absolutely replaceable. Yeah. I had a friend of mine who was a sergeant in the police academy, and he had over a year of PTO, paid time off. Mm-hmm. And I would always convince him, I'm traveling all over the world all the time. And I'd invite him on these trips. He never would go to any of these trips. And he always had this kind of excuse, I have to be there, they're counting on me. I'm like, dude, you work for the freaking police department. Mm-hmm. If, God forbid, tomorrow you drop dead of a heart attack, they're going to get another sergeant and give him your desk, and that's it. Like, it's done. You think that they're going to stop fighting crime because you died? Yeah. No, man. Yeah. And it's the same goes for you. God forbid, something happens to you, people are going to go do their finances somewhere else. Something happened to me, okay, I'm not going to write another book. Someone else wrote a book. Like, they're going to replace us. Will they be as good? Maybe not. Will they be as good looking? Maybe not. But they're going to find a replacement. Yeah. They're going to definitely not. But they're going to find a replacement. A replacement exists. Mm-hmm. Fact. Like, and you have to understand, people have to move on. This is life. So I'll give you an example. Something I say all the time. What do you think's going to happen 30 minutes after your funeral? What do you think's going to happen? I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Someone's going to look at someone else and say, so what do you want to go eat? Yeah. right?
Right.
You hungry?
Yeah.
What do you need for dinner? What do you need for lunch? Because life goes on, dude.
Yeah.
They're not going to say, Chris died. The world has ended. Shut everything down.
Yes.
He's irreplaceable. Stop the world. No, dude. They're going to say, that sucks. We'll remember him fondly. What do you want to go eat? You want a sandwich?
Yeah.
You want to go get a shake? Let's go. Come on.
Yeah.
Cheer up, buddy.
Well, do you think... So I actually think we're saying things very similarly, though, just from like a different frame. Because irreplaceable meaning adding the most value, right? And I think that can be and I get it from a business standpoint. It's interesting from a personal standpoint. That could get gray, and that might be, another time we have you on the show, because obviously personal is totally different than business. But
Right.
I wanted to ask you about your first interaction with basically your only competition in your area at the time, and how much mental prep you took yourself through. Now, I've got to admit, when I was reading this, I'm like the exact same. Professionally, personally, I do this sometimes to the detriment of my own sleep. Now we just don't sleep because we have a daughter, but like that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
How do you, or did you, balance the juggling act of making sure you prep but don't prep too hard and sacrifice yourself, as I'm sure you've succumbed to the same issue? And there was a quote that I believe you've mentioned by Mark Twain: I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which had never happened.
So I didn't do a balance. I was obsessed with outcome. Obsessed. Like to a fault. Like to the point that I would get sick because I didn't eat, or I ate too much, or I was only eating junk food, and I didn't sleep, and all I did was think and think and think, and what are the ways? And I mean, that's how I became successful. That's not how I stayed successful. That's not how I grew. But that kind of mentality is initially what got me going. Good old-fashioned hard work. It wasn't that I was so smart. It wasn't, anything miraculous. I just was obsessive.
Yeah.
Obsessive of the outcome. I wanted to win, and I was going to do anything and everything to win. It didn't matter what the hell it was, or what time it was, or what day it was.
Yeah.
I'm going to win, and that's the only thing I knew. So, that's the truth.
Yeah. No, I get it, man. Well, and I'm very similar. I will say the one caveat was, and again, I'm totally fine now, but because I've had Crohn's my whole life with autoimmune, eventually that catches up to you, so you have to kind of pivot. But I mean, even then, we can talk about that after the show. I mean, there have been times where, I've been knocking on Jesus's door prematurely, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, before I check out, I got to get this done. So I hear you, but it's one of those things where I'm assuming you would say this to people that look up to you and go to you for coaching and consulting. You would tell them, don't do this. Like, enjoy it, but we can't help but be hypocritical because that's what got us to where we were. Now, I read...
So I've answered this, by the way.
Okay,
recently.
Go for it. Yeah.
So that they were asking me what would I do differently if I could rewind the tape. And it wasn't that I'd be less intense, because I was super intense, but I would celebrate the wins. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? So for example, let's say my goal was to make $100,000. Well, okay, the day that I made $1, if I made my first dollar today, I'd celebrate that somehow. How exactly? Well, maybe I ate some ice cream. Maybe I took my dog for a walk. I don't know, but I'd do something to mark the celebration. Then if I got to 1,000, I'd do something else, and 5,000 and 10,000 and so on and so forth. But I would set little, benchmarks for, I'm going to acknowledge how far I've come and enjoy this process. I'm going to bust my ass. I'm going to work as hard as possible, but I'm also going to acknowledge my success along the way, which is something that I did not do at all.
Yeah.
I was a multi-millionaire living in a freaking studio apartment, and I didn't celebrate any wins. I never celebrated wins. I was just like, okay, great, we made that money, I did that deal, great, keep going. Like, nothing mattered. It's not like I said, I'm going to book a 30-day European... Nothing. Work.
But do you think also part of your celebration and enjoyment was because you loved what you did so much, where you maybe look back and said, well, I'm loving what I'm doing, so that is the reward?
Yes, that's a good point, but it doesn't mean that you can acknowledge your progress.
Yes.
And that's what I was lacking. It's not that I had to book a trip to Europe because, I made $1 million. I should go to Europe. No, okay. It could be go to McDonald's and have a sundae with hot fudge on it. Just something to mark, hey, you did it, man. Good job. You eat your ice cream, enjoy it, and then let's go do the next one. It could have been as simple as that. I just didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
You know, I had tons of money, tons of assets, and I just never said I deserve, I don't know, a new car. I just didn't do that. I didn't do much of that at all.
You never even acknowledged it. Like, okay. Yeah, that's, yeah. I mean,
like, oh, you're doing good. Yeah, all right. I could be doing better. You bought that building and you sold it and you made $1 million. I could have made $2 million. I'm gonna try for the next one. Like, it was just like just kept on going.
But
weird.
Also knowing you, I could also argue, and this is a compliment, that is your humble demeanor, putting yourself in check, because if you acknowledge too much, then you're dancing with the devil with your ego. That's what I could have seen.
Right.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, I think that's the only thing I would have done differently. That's the only thing I would have done differently if I could rewind the tape. And again, doesn't mean I was going to go out and buy a Ferrari, but just, hey man, I'm doing good.
Yeah.
Keep going, but just take a second to be like,
take a deep breath.
You did good.
Yeah.
Okay, now go to the next one.
Capitalizers, this episode is sponsored by the best-selling book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. Regardless of where you're at in your financial life, whether you're just beginning to express interest and commitment to your personal finances, at the pinnacle of your career, winding down into retirement, or thinking about your legacy for future generations, this book walks you through every step of the way so you can succeed on your terms and with your own values and passions guiding you. After reading this book, you will officially have Christopher A. Panayotu, the Cap in Capitalize, in your back pocket, guiding you in detail through every step of the way so that you can take charge of your finances, not the other way around. Head on over to Amazon.com today and start capitalizing your finances to the fullest with this incredible book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to financial framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. And now, back to the episode.
Well, did that help you when you were writing your book? Like, hey, I just wrote this chapter, I could chill out, or did you have the same mentality?
No, I was the same, like, obsessive, compulsive, and I'm going to finish the book today. It's like, it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. And it's your greatest gift is your greatest curse. I mean, that's one of my favorite sayings. My mentor taught me that years ago, and it rings true in so many ways. But hopefully, whether it's your restaurants or a future business or maybe another book, who still is Max Lewis, that could be the second parter. You can enjoy it along the way and actively remind yourself. And then if not, you just come back and re-listen to this episode.
Yeah.
Now, for you, when I read you bought your across-town rival, and when I read the dollar amount, right, relative to the multiple, I nearly fell out of my chair. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the steal of a lifetime. And so how long, this is much more of a surface level question, how long did it take you to realize that the odds of you having a deal like that again was very slim, if not never?
I never thought about it again because he was the biggest piece of the puzzle. For, in my world, at my level, there was no one else that I needed to worry about, at least during that time period.
Yeah.
Later on, the threats came from other startups, and I quickly extinguished most of all of those efforts, so they really didn't bother me. And then the other threats were national players, which ironically and I'm not sure if it's like this in every industry, but the national guys are just out of touch with local markets, and they weren't giving the service or the pricing, and I was just like, these guys are just freaking lost, man. So it wasn't that they weren't that hard of a competition for me.
Yeah. I feel like that's pretty universal for most businesses, though, because if you don't have boots on the ground, you have no idea what's going on.
Right.
I can tell you, even in our industry, now, little monkey wrench, though, everyone is competition in our industry. It used to be, hey, the guy or gal down the street that has a XYZ planning firm. Well, now with Zoom and all of that, it's everywhere.
Right.
But I will say, you look at the, I mean, shoot, there was a deal a couple years ago where I think it was called United Financial, was sold to Goldman Sachs for like 17 times revenue. And I mean, their revenue was massive. And I'm thinking, who in the heck would ever buy something like that? But at that level, you're dealing with people. I mean, it's just a different world. I mean, granted, you've done extremely well. You got to add a couple zeros before you can even sniff going to a group like that. And so for us, it's kind of similar to you. They're so out of touch with reality that no one cares, you know? Right. And you, speaking of finances, though, so you started to turn this corner financially once that merger was completed. And the first thing you did, or at least one of the first things, was pay off every debt. Mm-hmm. And as I read that, I'm like, oh, that is such a classic entrepreneur move. You're done with debt, you're over it, but you are a numbers guy. So did you think about the cost benefit of keeping some of those debts on your books with the interest rates that you had? Or were you just like, I'm done, I'm out of it?
Done. I could have owed that money at 0% interest and I would have paid it off.
Yeah.
Just not a debt guy. I still don't have any debt. I have all kinds of stuff, no debt. Thou shalt lend and not borrow. I don't borrow.
I get it. I totally get that. And speaking of, there's a lovely quote that I'm going to read to you. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. Mm-hmm. This is one of my favorite quotes in business, and I immediately thought of it when you gave the advice, quote, don't just go with the cheapest option, end quote. Now, little caveat. One thing that I've noticed in my industry is I can quickly tell in about 20 seconds if someone is going to be a great client or not, as the great ones view me as a partner, whereas the not so great penny pinch, and you know, that's when they think I'm just a transaction, or they're just purely cheapaholics. A service-based business like mine, it can be a little easier to overcome from my experience, but for your business, which was truly transactional, I'm not discrediting your service and your partnerships. How did you manage to convert your customers' minds to that partnership mentality?
So the way I did it was by adding the most value, like I suggested to you earlier. Yeah. So for example, in our industry, there were certain things that the competition wasn't doing. So for example, people who would run out of gas, let's say if you ran out of gas at 10 p.m. at night, the competition, which was Blue Rhino, was charging a $175 emergency delivery fee. When I first started, I charged people $15 because it was me, and I figured hour of my time, $15, right? Dude, you don't understand. That turned into such an amazing source of revenue for me because it was so reasonable that people called all the time. And they said, oh, $15, it's worth it. The guy showed up at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. So in the beginning, maybe it wasn't sustainable. But after a while, so many people started to get comfortable with ordering after hours that I had full routes of deliveries after hours. So it increased not only my sales and revenue, it increased the consumption of the customer, because if they're ordering fuel after hours instead of waiting till tomorrow, now they're using this fuel during the night, And then let's say in the morning, they're going to need more fuel. So I kind of almost doubled my sales by offering that as an option for people. And I obviously took out every single competitor. I had literally 100% of the market in the areas that I was selling propane to. 100% of the market in South Beach for heater gas. And and then what I did was I creeped that service charge up a little bit and I tested it. So then it was like $15 between 3 and 5, and then between 5 and 8 it was $30, and between after 8 it was $45. People still paid, and I made a lot of money. So one thing, that as a service, that's just an example, that as a service. Another hurdle was people had to get their own insurance, and that was a pain in the ass, and it cost a lot of money. So I figured out a way that I could give them the insurance either for free or at a very low cost, or I'd work the cost of their insurance into the product that I'm selling. So they didn't even feel it or know that I was charging it to them. But to the consumer, they're like, so for example, just taking those two, these people deliver 24/7, 365. I delivered on Christmas. I delivered, me personally, on New Year's in the beginning. Later on, it was my staff. Insurance, which was a humongous barrier for people, solved that problem for you. Hey, what about the insurance? We do it for you. Don't worry about it. What do I have to do? Sign this paper. That's it. You don't have to do anything else. Our team's going to handle the whole thing. What does it cost me? Don't worry about it. Right? It's either in the price of the product. Early on, I started charging people for it. We had different people like different things, and that's another thing you have to understand the customer. Some people say, don't raise my price, charge me up front. Some people say, don't charge me up front, I'd rather raise my price, whatever. Or, hey, I don't want to do either, but I'll sign a 10-year contract. Okay, that's good for me too. Like, you find the way to win with each individual person, because not everyone is the same, and not everybody wants the same things. But the way that we solve this problem, and the way that I provide value, is by creating every single scenario, every possible scenario that I can, so that whether you're the guy who likes the insurance benefit, or he's the guy that likes the delivery benefit, or the other guy likes the fact that we are clean and presentable, or the other person likes the fact that we don't have a call attendant and a human being's going to answer the phone, even though my company was probably too big to have that I look for all the things, and I do all of them, so that the customer is like, man, these people deliver at the best times, they're always answer the phone, they provide me insurance, I get the best price. Why would I buy from somebody else?
Yeah.
Why would I buy from someone else? So creating that value, depending on the industry that you're in, I just attacked it from every single angle, and I could probably give you a list of like 50 things that I did in order to accomplish that, but it worked. It worked because I helped everyone. Everyone got, regardless of what was important to you. There's a certain amount of. So, for example, in your industry, you're dealing with people, and they generally want one of a handful of things. I don't know if you've identified them, but usually it's like the guy who's like, I want to retire and I want to have money for my kids, or I don't really care, I want to gamble and see if I can hit it big, or how many of those scenarios are there?
Yeah, no, yeah, I got it. There are more than you'd think, but I mean, not as many in the propane industry for sure.
So let's say there's 10.
Yeah.
Let's say there's 10.
Sure.
So you come up with a solution or a hook, an angle for every single one of those guys before you even meet them, because you already know the situation exists.
Yeah.
And then when you encounter this person, I'm the guy who wants who wants to gamble. Perfect. Here's your program, the gambling program.
Yeah.
Sold. I'm the guy who wants to play it safe. Here's your program, sir. Here's the Play It Safe program, tailored for a guy just like you. Okay, great. Sign me up.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it's so interesting too, because here lies the difference between, and I agree with what you're saying, between service and like the series of propane, where in we have a client who cleans roofs, as an example, right? That company has 4 options. What you see is what you got, cut and dry. And
right.
In service, it can be a little bit gray in nuance, because everyone truly is different. No different than what you were saying, but at the end of the day, you're selling propane.
Right.
You know what I mean? And there's
right.
so many ways to skin that cat, versus in the world of finance, not to go on a huge detour, I would say most people have right, you're more conservative, you're more aggressive, here's that portfolio, blah, 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 blah. Now, I could go on a tangent, but this is not my episode about me. This is my episode about you. That is for another.
Yes, but here, I want you to, because I want you to get this, because I like for people to understand this. So
yeah,
what people that buy propane, right? People that buy propane, what do they want?
Well, they want the propane.
They don't want the propane. They do not want the propane.
They want to be taken care of.
Nope. They don't want to be taken care of.
They
prefer that I didn't exist. What do they want? And this is a good exercise that I want you to work on in your business.
Okay.
Think about this. People that buy propane, they want hot water to be able to cook their food, hot jacuzzi or a pool, a fireplace. They want what propane allows them to do. Okay, they want their hot. They want to go to take a shower, turn on that hot water, and the water comes out hot. Now, if I don't deliver the propane, what happens? Now they're pissed. Now they don't have hot water. If they go to boil an egg and they can't boil an egg because I didn't deliver the gas, now they're pissed off because they can't boil an egg. They don't give a shit about propane. They want to boil their egg. And if you don't deliver the propane, now they can't boil their egg. But what they really want is what propane allows them to do.
Yes.
So if you can create an experience where they get what they want with the least amount of friction possible, you got a customer for life. My best customer would not even know the name of my company. It'd be their credit card's on file, the gas shows up on time, they never run out, and their home runs perfectly and nothing ever happens out of the ordinary. They never run out, they always pay the bill, they barely look at the bill, and they keep going along with their lives. Why? Because the service is great and there's no issues. And it's the same in every business. People think like what's the car wash business? What do people want when they go get their car washed? Oh, they want a clean car. No, well, it's about self-esteem. Car wash business is about self-esteem. People want a clean car. Why? Because if my car's dirty, you see me as dirty. Right? It's a self-esteem business.
Right.
I need to be clean. The same guy who wants his car cleaned every single week, I guarantee you, is going to be dressed nice, maybe has some cologne on and an iron shirt, and it's like, this is about self-esteem. So every business has that. It's like surface level. Oh, they want service. No, man. If even me, I'd be like, fuck. I don't give a fuck about service or business, propane. Like what? I just want to cook. If the propane company didn't exist, it'd be even better. If I could just cook without having to deal with another company, another invoice, another delivery schedule.
Yeah.
You get it?
I totally get it. Yeah,
okay.
I totally get that. Well, and you know, when we first met, and then when we got to really know each other in Columbus. It's clear that you not only loved what you do, but you love now what you're doing as far as coaching, instilling greatness in business minds. But you did take that little detour from the grind path when you and your brother had, shall we say, a little disagreement in business. And obviously you traveled the world. You focused on what made you happy. It's much more of a statement than a question, but isn't it interesting to you, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but in a slightly different context, how those that are successful say it's worth to take the time to make yourself happy, yet if it wasn't for their sacrifice into their career to achieve that happiness, they never would have been able to experience it. I mean, do you think about that ever?
I think it's earned. You know, you earn that, and once you earn it, you should do whatever the hell you want. But I don't. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Like what I was saying about acknowledging success. I think you should acknowledge it and you should do things to celebrate. But I definitely don't think you should go out and like party excessively until you've actually achieved something. It's kind of like my whole Rolex argument with these guys online the other day.
Yeah,
and I'm like. They're asking me my opinion on Rolex. I'm like, okay, I think Rolexes, are basically for poor people, if you think about it. Because it's like the first thing that someone who gets just enough money to buy to show the world that they've made some money. I mean, generally speaking, that's not in every case, but it happens in many cases, especially down here in South Florida. And you got these guys that have $30,000, $40,000 watches and they live with their mom, And it's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. So I don't know. I think it's subjective, and everyone's story is a little different. But
yeah, no, I was just more curious about that. Well, and also South Florida. I mean, that, as you
South
know,
Florida is its own world.
That's a different world, man. I mean, so on the West Coast, so the company I was with before I started Capitalize, I remember in San Diego, we would go to the racetracks. And, in San Diego, the sun's out, no different in South Florida. Everyone's gorgeous, all that.
Yep.
And I remember quickly looking around going, how many people are truly what they show? Right? How many people are truly how wealthy?
Right.
How many people are truly happy? I mean, everyone is just drop dead gorgeous. So, like, that didn't need to be an issue. But even then, how many people were just absolutely caked up? A
lot.
It was sad.
What color is Bill Gates' Rolex?
Yeah, no, that's my point. No one, I mean, it's one of those things. I would say the only caveat is I have met some people where they buy it, and this is purely for the Rolex standpoint. They use it on YouTube, they get a deduction and all that fun stuff.
Of course, man.
But that's very seldom the case. And I want to keep going on when you devoted your mind to selling your company, which initially it was for $25 million. Okay.
Yeah.
How did you keep your excitement closed off from your employees as you pride yourself on being full disclosure? Was that a really tough balancing act for you?
Well, I had so I had these 6x6 whiteboards that I utilized during that time.
Yep.
In addition to my notebooks that I'd write all my notes and goals on. And what I did was my whiteboard that was in my office had goals and objectives in order to grow and improve the business as well as the lives of our customers and employees. So that was just like growth and milestones and benchmarks that we wanted to hit. My personal objectives were at home, obviously out of the eyes of the employees, and I didn't find it hard to keep that under wraps at all because they were just goals, like these are things that we need to do. My personal stuff was, okay, one day I wish, for this to happen, but I don't know, it was pretty easy. Everybody saw it as like, okay, this is what we should be doing, and it's good for everyone, the business, me, the customers, everyone. We grow, we make more money, everybody benefits. And that's one of the things that I really prided myself on, is making sure that the employees participated in my wins, always. Yep. Before I sold the business and after I sold the business. Just every time I was doing better and I said, okay, I have this extra room to improve people's lives, I did it. And all that good energy came back into the business, because as the employees started to realize, man, this guy's taking care of us, they started to value their position in the business as well as myself and their fellow employees, and pushed we really became like a family.
Yeah.
So it was really cool.
Yeah. No, and I got that not only when I read your book, but when I was first talking to you about your path in business. You can tell very quickly, just meeting you, how much you care and still care about your people. Now, when I first met you, I was telling you about my thinking room, and you were incredibly intrigued by that, and to the point where I was like, okay, I've had people interested, but like, he's really interested. And then after reading your book, I totally get why, because you devoted an entire chapter to the same concept. So as a sidebar, what are some of the things that you're thinking about these days?
Every day is different. I deal with a lot of things and scenarios. I help a lot of people. I coach a lot of people. For example, last Friday, or was it Friday or Thursday? It was last Thursday. I was at a juvenile detention center where I'm speaking with these kids that are in there for a litany of different reasons. And a lot of thinking time since then has been devoted to that. How can I improve my time with them? What are better questions that I could ask them? How could I maximize the sessions and things like that? So every day is different. So that's just an example. I'm consulting for about 7 different companies at this very moment. So depending on who I speak to that day and what scenario might arise, I'll think about it, And I I don't know. It's just like, to me, it's second nature at this point. I always have a notepad. I always have a pen, and I just love to think. And I don't think it's not final. You know, you don't have a thinking time session on something, solve it, and it's done. You can always improve on anything. You know, so one of the things I love to say to people is success is never final. It's not. You get better, you grow, but success is never final. And you can constantly improve. The environment changes, the scenarios change, the people change, and there's always a new element to consider. And when you have these new elements to consider, then you say, okay, something just happened. The same environment I was in yesterday now has changed because of X reason. What should I do differently? How should I proceed? Whatever. There's obviously, you know, there's 1,000 questions.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, day to day it changes. But I literally have, like, I'm not kidding. I have notepad like this, like notepads.
Yeah.
I probably have like 20 of them in my house, and I'm just every once in a while I'll grab one and I'll just start like writing things down, thinking about this, thinking about that. Okay, come up with like a solution for the day, or maybe some action items. And usually, if it's action items, I don't get up until I act on the items right now. Like, something has to happen right now based on what I just discovered. I'm going to pick up my phone and call somebody or email or whatever and make something happen on what I just discovered right now from this thinking session. Because if not, then the day gets away from you. You get up, you go, next thing you know, you get a drink of water, and then someone, and it gets away from you.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, before I get up, boom, 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 call, whatever, put those things in motion, and then, all right, keep on going.
Hop on Capitalize Your Finances podcast, top financial podcast in the world, things of that nature.
There you go.
Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, I didn't mean to take the words out of your mouth. But
Thank you.
So speaking of finance, though, so you have a list of like 100 things to do before you die. And I'm curious, financially speaking, what comes to mind on that list, if anything?
Financially speaking?
Yeah.
I always change it. Isn't it funny? Like, I always, I'm always growing in that area. So if I put, for example, I want to make $100 million and I make $100 million, then I'll say, okay, I want to make 150, 500 million, whatever it is. Like, I'll kind of change my goals. Like, I'll check it off. Like we talked about earlier, like, okay, I reached it. Awesome. Celebrate. Buy yourself something. Whatever. But
not a
financially,
Rolex.
No, there's no freaking Rolex getting put. If I had a Rolex, I'd throw it in the lake. So, no, I'd sell it and give the money to charity.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I am constantly changing that. It's difficult. I find it difficult sometimes to want more financially because I do everything I want to do.
Yeah.
You know, so you kind of got to keep it interesting in other ways, like the jail thing, giving back and things like that, because once you have enough to live, you got a roof over your head, and specifically zero debt in my case. I'm debt averse. I don't like debt.
Yeah.
I'm happy. I'm comfortable. If I had 50 million in the bank and I owed 1 million, I'd be tossing and turning at night. It's just how I am. I don't like owing money. I don't. Yeah. So for me, like, I'm successful because I don't have any debt and I do everything I want to do. And I want to make more money. I think everybody wants to make more money. You want to progress, and as Tony Robbins would say, progress equals happiness.
Yeah. So
we need to be progressing in some way or another. But financially, just keep doing what I'm doing. I do a bunch of real estate deals now.
Yeah.
Things that are not advertised to the public or anything like that.
Yeah, until now. But on a serious note, there's another. No, we're not going to go into those. There's another book I think you should read, The Joys of Compounding by Gautam Vaid. He came on our show. Shout out Gautam. He's got another book coming out, which I have not read yet, in November, and he's going to come back on the pod. But he talks about the 4 pillars of wealth, and he says it much more articulate than I do. So there's everyone's hustling, trying to get by, paycheck to paycheck, which is a compliment because that means you're not going backwards. What he would call traditional wealth trajectory. So you grow, get to retirement, you're able to retire, which, by the way, that is not a knock. Like, that is very admirable because not a lot of people are able to get to that point. But then there's the fourth tier where you know that you're good. In my case, your kids are good, or kids' kids are good, and you could triple your income. It doesn't really matter. So then you're able to see the world for what it truly is. And one of the things that he has told himself, and I've implemented in my life, in my wife's life, where, you know, we're not at that point yet, but rounded third, if we want to use the metaphor. And once you get to that point as a compounding, because making the next dollar doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of life, no, but then it shifts in our mindset to being a stewardship of what God has blessed us. Now, it doesn't have to be faith-based, but being a stewardship of your success, I think, is universal. And it's been really helpful for us because it removes the, I've just got to make the next dollar. Because then you're never happy, you know?
Right.
And that's not exactly for you as it is for our listeners at home, but, you know.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of people struggle with knowing when they've won. Mm-hmm. And if you have a clear definition of success, as I do, I know when I've won. Okay, I won, like, right? I won a long time ago. I won before I sold my business. I had a very simple life. I lived in an extremely small house, but I had no bills, and I was happy. I drove the car that I wanted to drive, which was nothing special. It was a Denali pickup truck, and I did whatever the hell I wanted to do because I didn't do it for the money. I did it for the freedom.
Yes.
Having a Rolex doesn't help me if I got to go to work in the morning. I want to do whatever the hell I want to do. If I want to go fishing, I go fishing. If I want to go for a walk, I go for a walk. If I want to go to Canada, I'll go to Canada. That, to me, is how I define success. Yeah. Having control, or as much control as I possibly can, over my time and what I do with it. Not material things. I enjoy material things just like anyone else. I'd have a lot of fun driving a Ferrari and a lot of fun, whatever, on a private jet. But more importantly, if I don't have to be somewhere where I'm trading my time for money, I won.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and speaking of winning, because I know our time is coming to a close, and we're going to have you back on when you write your second and third and fourth book. No pressure. Okay?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, no pressure on that at all. But after you sold the business, tell our fans what it felt like to have that monstrous sum of money wired into your account, because it had to be surreal.
It's funny because I was asked this question the other day, and the answer is it didn't feel like anything. It felt like nothing. It felt like numbers on a screen. You know, when they asked me to verify that I received the wire, and I went to my office, I logged in, put the account number in, looked at it, I saw the money, and I was like, yeah, the money's there. Like, it was nothing, dude. Remember, it was not about the money. I didn't do it for money. And it was just a way of keeping score, I guess you could say, but it wasn't about money. It did not make me happier. I didn't feel like I had a big S on my chest. I didn't grow any taller. Nothing happened. It was just like money. Now, the special thing that happened was when I was able to start handing out checks to my employees. Mm-hmm. You know, we had 70 people line up outside of my office the day that I sold the business, and one at a time they came into my office, and, you know, tell them, hey, you know, we sold the business, and as you know, there's a lot of buzz happening, and, you know, give them the check and the crying and the hugging, and, you know, I even get goosebumps thinking about it. It was sad, man. It was like sad but joyous, you know? Mm-hmm. I was sad because it was like the breaking up of a family, you know? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we were able to change a lot of lives that day. You know, people bought homes and all kinds of things. It was really, really special. Yeah. I was telling Nick the other day that one of these guys actually asked me, if I give you the money back, can you not sell the company and we stay working here together as a family? Oh my God. It was like, my eyes get watery just thinking about it. I was like, I'm sorry, man. We already, you know, the company sold, you know. And, man, every person came, where I was crying the whole day.
Yeah.
I was just crying the whole day, crying and hugging. And, you know, it was cool. It was really cool. That was special. The money, meant absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, and obviously we have not sold, nor will we for many, many years. Turns out a 9-month-old is very expensive. But
Yeah.
I can tell you, since you haven't had kids, that feeling of growing and eventually selling from clients that have had kids and have sold a business, it's that same feeling. I mean, that was your child. I mean, you grew and nurtured. The only difference is it actually paid for you. Abby is not on the payroll yet. We're working on it. So don't ever forget that feeling. And I'll tell you, if you ever decide to start a family, you're going to be an awesome dad, because you take the mental models that you have from business and you apply that to your child. I mean, he or she will be just elated to have a dad like you. So
thank you.
I got to ask a final question before we wrap this thing up.
Yes, sir.
Out of everything that you have learned from the business world, what is the number one piece of financial advice you could give our capitalizers?
I'm going to give you something that I feel very strongly about, and it's not necessarily financial advice.
Okay.
It's just advice.
Great.
So, in Spanish, the literal translation is "you are who you hang out with." In my book, I believe I quote it as, well, let me put it to you this way. You hang out with people who are getting the results that you're after. Spend time with people who are getting the results that you are after. You want to, and I say it in the book, I don't know if you remember, but I say, look, for example, let's rewind. I want to give you the whole thing. You don't ask the janitor for expert banking advice. And you don't ask the banker for expert advice on mopping a floor. Right? That's first. Secondly, if you hang out with people who are doing drugs all day, eventually you're going to do drugs. You hang out with 5 bankers, eventually you're going to learn something about banking. My advice for life in general, financial or otherwise, is try to get close and spend time with the people that are getting the results you're after. And that is going to do more for you than anything that I could tell you. That's literally the best advice. If I wanted to learn more about Chinese and I went to China for 6 months, I'm going to be speaking Chinese after that 6 months, right? I'm going to be speaking Chinese. You don't have to tell me who to speak to. You don't got to tell me what city to go to. Just go hang out with the Chinese. Guess what? I'm going to come back 6 to 12 months later. I'm going to be speaking fluent Chinese. So just analyze who you're spending your time with, what environments you're spending your time with. Keep your radar on. And if you find yourself in a position or a situation where you're like, man, this is an ugly person, or this is an ugly situation, or these people are talking about dumb stuff that I don't really care about, remove yourself from the environment. And put yourself in an environment that'll help you get elevated to the next level of whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. Even if it's just trying to accomplish better quality conversations, table talk. Even if it's just that. Put yourself in a room where you're getting fed, not drained, or you're going to put yourself in an environment where you're susceptible to something stupid happening. I don't know.
Yeah.
People that steal or whatever. So that's just the advice. If I had kids, that'd be the advice that I give them. My dying words would be, what do you want to do? You want to be a banker? Hang out with bankers. Yeah. Spend your time with the people that are getting the results you're after.
Yeah. And also don't buy Rolexes, which is
don't buy Rolex. If you buy a Rolex, I'll come back from the dead. And
that's right. And I was going to say this would be an ill-opportune time to say this episode is sponsored by Rolex, but it's not.
Yeah. They're not going to like me.
Yeah, they're not going to like. Yeah, that's one sponsor that is off the capitalized radar for the near future. But Max, where can capitalizers go to best support and follow you?
I'm active on Instagram. For the most part, I know that the team has a Twitter, but I'm not on the Twitter or the TikTok. I don't use any of that stuff. If they want to get a hold of me on Instagram, they can. The book is on Barnes & Nobles, Amazon, Ingram, Spark, pretty much every outlet. And I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
You are very easy to get a hold of. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And for those of you that have chosen to listen in, if you have not bought Who is Max Lewis, 37 chapters, 37 lessons, $37 million, you need to go do so right now. It's not that he needs the money. He's just trying to spread the wealth and cheer. For those of you that are new to the channel, welcome. For you veterans out there, you know the drill. If you have any questions about today's episode, you can either give us a call, 253-214-3050, or you can shoot me an email, chris@capitalizeyourfinances.com. If you are listening in and going, gosh, this is a freaking awesome podcast, I would love to be part of the Capitalize community and come on as a guest, head on over to capitalizepodcast.com, shoot us a DM. Myself and my team look at it every single day. As always, I'm your host, Chris Ray Paniotu, the Captain Capitalize, and until next time, keep capitalizing.
You should always seek counsel of the appropriate advisor prior to making any investment decision. All investments are subject to risk, including the loss of principal. Christopher Paniotu is a registered representative with and securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, and member FINRA SIPC. The investment professionals are affiliated with LPL Financial and are conducting business using the name Capitalize Your Finances, a separate entity from LPL Financial. Max Lewis and any other individual or company mentioned in this podcast are not affiliated with Capitalize Your Finances or LPL Financial.